I wish I had a jazz piano teacher that taught me these 4 things that I'm going to show you today. See, I didn't turn pro until I was 39 years old. If I had learned this sooner, you probably would have seen me playing at the Blue Note. See, these 4 things transformed my playing in such a big way, and I think they'll transform your playing too. I remember how intimidated I was when I was first trying to improvise. There's so many notes available to us, and the idea of playing the wrong note was really scary. And there are all these resources that I had, all these books and videos and stuff that told me what notes were available to play over what chord, and so I became obsessed with trying to memorize all of that theory. And after a while, once I'd figured out what notes I could use, I was playing solos that sounded like this. But these solos that I was playing sounded nothing like what I wanted to sound like. They were dull and meandering and aimless. And so at that point I thought, I just don't know the cool notes yet. And so I went deeper into the music theory, digging into fancier scales and altered dominants and all this stuff to learn all these cool notes. But even so, after I'd learned all these hipper scales, my solos still sounded dull and lifeless and boring. And so this leads me to the first thing I wish I had known 30 years ago. Nobody dances to the notes. Charlie Parker and John Coltrane and all the greats, they were playing in dance clubs. They were getting people moving. And it didn't matter how cool the notes were. What people were there for was the rhythm. See, it wasn't that all these notes that I had learned were incorrect, but I hadn't yet understood how to put them into practice. And the context that I was missing was the rhythm. See, even just a single note, but with the right rhythm, can go a long way. See, the big takeaway on this was that I needed to think rhythm first. If I could come up with a phrase like ba-doo-ba-doo-da, do-da-ba-doo-da, I could now take the notes that I knew and apply it to that rhythm and sound freaking cool. And once I really started working on this, da-da-dee-ba-doo-da, ba-doo-dee-be-dee-da, ba-da-ba-doo-da, da-da-da-ba-doo-da, ba-ding-ba. You start to get creative and have some fun ideas. Now that I was able to create some really hip phrases, I was ready to string these together into solos. But my solos were sounding random and weird, and so that's why we need tip number 2. So I was feeling pretty creative at this point. I could come up with some interesting phrases, and I was thinking I could just string these back to create an overarching solo, right? And so that's what I started to do. I would take a tune and try and play 2, 3, or 4 times through the head, improvising a solo. But the solo sounded random, and worse than that, the more that I went on, the less creative that I was. I was starting to run out of ideas. But my perspective on this changed in a big way when I started listening to blues players. See, what I was hearing is that these players would come up with one little idea, one little motif, a little melodic phrase, and they would repeat it. Maybe they would shift it around to start on different notes. Maybe they would shift where rhythmically in the measure it starts. Maybe sometimes they would shorten it, or other times they would lengthen it. So doing this, they could take just one simple melodic idea and they could solo over the entire tune with it. So if we treat this melodic motif that we created as a constraint, the building block that our whole solo has to be based off of, all kinds of creative things come out of it. The result of this was actually quite profound, because before I was trying to string all these random ideas together every 2 bars, and that's exactly the way that the audience heard it. But when I simplified this so that I was playing a single idea and then just kind of like exploring that idea, well, the audience was able to come along on that journey with me. They could follow along with it too. But there was one technique that really unlocked all this for me just in an instant. Now, this third technique is something that I knew for a long time that I should be doing, but I put off doing it because frankly, I was embarrassed and self-conscious about it. But man, I wish I had gotten over that sooner. And that is being comfortable singing your solos. I'm a pretty good piano player, but ask anybody in my life and they will tell you that I'm a terrible singer. And I am so self-conscious about the way that my voice sounds. But there's something about jazz being a language and being able to solo using that language. See, when you and I have a conversation like we're doing right now, you take a breath, you pause. Sometimes you inflect up, you inflect down. You change your rhythm and your pacing. You emphasize some words over other words. All of these ways of phrasing our speech and talking to each other, this is kind of a shared language that we have learned over our lifetime speaking. But what I didn't realize for so long was how directly those things translate into the solos that we play. I also think that there's something about your singing voice being more connected to your intuition for what good jazz is versus your fingers. Here's what I mean by that. There's nothing really in the way between our brain and our mouth. If we have a good jazz idea, we can probably scat it or sing it or whatever. At least for me, when I try to do this with my hands, all of this like technical stuff gets in the way. My brain and my hands just don't seem to be as well connected. Fingers start relying on all these patterns and muscle memory and things that I've learned over time that they take charge of what the solo is supposed to sound like. And that is not really a creative exercise anymore, right? That's a technical exercise. If we want to be creative, we need to really link with our voice. My favorite players, Errol Garner, Keith Jarrett, even Glenn Gould would sing along with their playing. When I sing my solos, I gain access back to that jazz language, to all of that articulation and feel and phrasing and pauses that we talked about when we were speaking. All of that becomes available to me in the solo that I'm playing. And because I'm singing, it's like the signal travels all the way through me to my fingers, and I play a much cooler solo. I remember the first time I tried this because I knew instantly that my solos were better. It didn't even take any practice. It just happened on the first time, and from that moment on, all of my solos became better. Man, I wish I'd done that when I was 19. His fourth idea is the most profound of all of them though. So the first three things that we talked about all had something in common. They all are about decoupling your creative instincts from the technical training. I want to be very careful here not to knock on the importance of technical training or music theory knowledge. That is the body of wisdom that we use to build everything from. But when you try to live in the technical world, you can't be creative. You can't do both things at the same time. There's no way while you're soloing that you be trying to think about all these technical things you've learned, like finding the third of the chord and navigating your way to the third of the next chord, maybe using an arpeggio, going up, coming down the Phrygian dominant scale. Like what? Like these are all technical exercises that we learn to like train our intuition and get our fingers right, but we can't use any of this when we're actually performing. So as we said in our last point, we're gonna let our voice take the lead. Our voice has that direct connection to our intuition to know what to play. And when we get to go perform, you gotta like let go of all of it. Like don't think about any of it at all, right? Just go with whatever your voice tells you to play. I know this probably sounds more intimidating, not less intimidating, but it is also so freeing. I can't tell you how many students that I have worked with who are nerds like me, who approach all of this from a theory-first perspective. And I get it. Like what I was saying at the very beginning of this video, kind of comforting to know that what you're going to play are all safe notes, that you're following the rules. But that's the thing about music theory, right? It's not here to tell you what the rules are to play. It's just here to explain what other people have played before you. It is an analysis tool, but you can't like reverse engineer your way into good jazz. Playing jazz is an art, not a science. But music theory is a science, not an art. I wish that my teachers 30 years ago had encouraged me to be creative, to listen to what I had to say, to have the courage to say it, and then to be a part of the conversation that results. Every Wednesday, I email out a newsletter that has some kind of playing tip like this in it. The members of my community tell me that the newsletter is the favorite thing that I do for them. There's a link down in the description where you can read all the past editions of that and sign up to get it in your inbox too. All of us at some point or another get stuck when we're playing, like we feel like we've hit a plateau and we just can't get any better. And if that is true for you, you need to watch this video next.